Hey Spectroma, or to my slants, it's me, SpikeGhost1000, coming at you another video. In this video, I am I'm not really turning anything again. I'm actually making my own SCPs. I got this idea from JokerJoe65 on Discord, like last few times. But usually he gave me some characters. But this time it actually came to be a, just an idea. He gave me two SCPs that are both the same classification, SCP-7001. SCP-7000 is going to be an SCP I'm going over next time, and all these are going to be SCP-7000 higher because every single number below that's nearly already taken. So now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Let's go. The first two SCPs are SCP-7001-A and B. These two SCPs are the same classification, but two different files. I've decided to make that up. And most of this information does come from JokerJoe65 on Discord, but I've added a few facts from my own. And now the first two are his first two clips. The first clip of each part, are his, but after that is my drawing style and my version of his character. Let's just go in and see, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's go. After finally gaining some access to some files from the higher-ups of the O5 Council, I have been granted a permission to create some audio files over some of the more unknown and higher numbered SCPs. All these SCPs are quite weird and not all very dangerous, but most of these are actually, scratch that, they're actually really dangerous if you think about it. But first SCP it's actually the same SCP, but for some reason has two different files. First one is SCP-7001-1. Subject name Creator. Containment level is Euclid. He is a humanoid creature of sorts, but has a few unique properties. Other than the fact that he's rarely able to be petrified, he also is not shockingly immensely strong, and has the ability to warp space-time around him. He's made of sentient space, actually. He also has a few other things about him, like the fact that he is the creator of SCP-7001. The -B. He himself is, we have for the record to repetrify him. Oh, found the information. He is held in Site 43, and they both SCPs are heavily guarded at all costs. Also, the creator was turned to stone and breaks out every 30 years from the stone, and that is when we perform Task Delta to repetrify him. It's a very weird procedure, and only level 4 or higher can access files or contact with him or the things he's created, which are masks. Any other things about him? I am actually level security number 4.5, which is a rare occurrence because I am really well trusted by the SCP Foundation, and I'm up there with the O5 Council, but I'm not actually part of them. People just say I have the level 5 security clearance, but all 4.5 gave me access to is actually every single file except for a few handful of ones, like the Scarlet King one. I've heard about that one from the higher ups, but he said once you know about it, you will never be the same. So I have to agree that I don't have access to every file, but I have access to a good few thousand files. Let's get to the next one. Okay, now the next one is the SCP 7001 I was talking about earlier. This SCP is known as Blissful Torture Masks, which is a quite weird SCP. Containment level is Euclid, and like the name states, one side is pretty much a blissful time if you wear it, but the other side is filled with torture and agony. The reason why it's classified as Euclid is because of the fact that, because of its properties, it can harm so many humans so fast. It has been known to definitely be kept. We have been thinking about transporting it to another Foundation site, but for some reason, the repetrification, if not, would actually wear off about, pretty much nearly wear off pretty much 5 days afterwards. No matter what time, it could be the next day after we moved it, or like 5 years after we petrified SCP-7001. But for some reason, no matter whenever we're trying to move the mask to another Foundation site, he always breaks out of the stone, and then the next day, and pretty much instantly teleports to get the masks. And we haven't found out why he wears, if he can even wear the masks, or even how he sees her, for that matter. Now, D-class personnel are the only ones who aren't able to wear the masks. And usually we give them amnestics afterwards, so that way they won't remember anything from whatever had happened. The first time we didn't do this led to a containment breach, where one D-class personnel tried to destroy the masks, which weirdly enough they weren't able to do, because once he got too close with a flamethrower, which he somehow got from the guards, he actually didn't get any wounds himself, except for he didn't inflict any major damage to the SCP, but for some reason he was the one who got the burn scars, and he is still around. He's actually now a member of a attack squad under me. The reason why is because he actually gained some knowledge of SCPs that are actually closely related to this type of SCP. He says that he will tell us more in due time, but due to that, and it's more to be more cooperative, he has actually been hired. His salary is relatively good. He lives in a nice house, but he mostly stays on the Foundation site because of the fact that we mostly need him to help us make sure no D-class personnel, make sure all D-class personnel from testing get their amnestics. He knows the procedure because he kind of watched this before. So now let's get to my next audio file. Now, before we get into my two original SCPs, I just want to say the reason why I'm not coloring them in anymore is because I found out about the bucket tool. And as you can see, it makes everything a whole lot cleaner and a whole lot better looking. So, yeah, that I just found that I decided to incorporate that into my art style. I'm thinking about, for bigger drawings, more complicated ones, I will add a dash or whatever color I wanted for that section. So, yeah, now let's get to my two SCPs that I have made myself. Let's go. Now, SCP-7002, his subject name is Rake Arms, and containment level is actually safe. It's just pretty much your average guy who woke up one day with rakes for arms. He really doesn't know why. He doesn't really have that many anomalous properties, except for the fact that when testing, we have drawn blood from him, and some x-rays show that he actually does have bones and nerves within the the rake arm pieces in there, and we've done some testing. He doesn't seem to feel pain whenever we scrape off some wood, and it turns out this wood is pretty much a common oak. Same thing for both sides, but one is a 3 or 4 pronged metal one, and the other one is pretty much your regular triangle, trapezoid shaped rake. He mostly is around foundation site raking up leaves, and at times we can actually see him trying to control the little ends of the rake like fingers. He's actually able to do this, but he said it hurts a little, but I've been getting used to it more and more. I have actually seen this myself, and I have seen him use that ability to pretty much grab him like claw hands and pretty much just lift up the leaves and toss them away. More study is needed, but containment level safe because although that one time he accidentally stabbed the eye out of a security guard, he apologized multiple times saying that it was a complete accident. And also we found out that he doesn't have any nerve endings, as in pain receptors, in those arms either. The triangle-based one is actually plastic. We have incinerated it before during a test by accident, and he didn't scream at all. What we were trying to do was we were testing another SCP, seeing if it has any flame resistance, and he was nearby breaking up leaves, and the SCP did have flame resistance. For some reason, the flames bounced off and melted his hand. We later saw him go over and replace it, pretty much unscrewing it and replacing it, and we have seen him not even wince at that, and it was like nerves had started to grow into it. We've also clipped off one just for testing to see if anything, but later, a day or so later, I went out and saw him breaking up leaves, and I saw the one we clipped off has fully regrown. He says he has limited regeneration properties, but it's mostly focused around his arms. We've actually sawed off them, and they don't actually rot at all. They do rust, but not a whole lot. If anything, they last about 5 times longer than your average rake. But other than that, that's pretty much the only anomalous properties this guy has. Now, the SCP I mentioned is going to be in my next audio log. Let's go. My next one is actually a Euclid class. SCP number 7003. Subject name, Raise Your Hands. Containment level, Euclid. This SCP is very dangerous. Like the incident I just talked about with SCP-7002, we have tested his flame-resistant properties with a low-degree flame, and it was a fireball attack. It was from a fireball gun we've made, designated SCP-7000. It's a simple weapon, but it also has multiple settings. I will talk about that next time. But we shot it at him. His hand morphed into a shield and it bounced off and hit SCP-7002. Now, more on this SCP. He is a Euclid class, although we have been seeing whether or not we should put him here. But we ultimately decided not to because he's actually relatively easy to contain. Safe means it's relatively, for the record, the containment levels are safe, Euclid, and Keter. Safe is relatively easy to contain, and sometimes not very dangerous at all. Euclid, it's a pain in the butt to contain, and also can be quite dangerous, but sometimes they're not very dangerous at all. They're just a pain to contain. Keter, nearly impossible to contain, usually very dangerous, rarely safe, but they are also known to be just very violent creatures in general, like SCP-6082. I really hate that one, to be honest. I'm personally thinking about trying to find a way myself to destroy it, and I personally believe that he is the son of Scarlet King. And same with SB999. I believe they're both children of the Scarlet King. I know about those SCPs, and I know about the Scarlet King and a little bit about him, but not a whole lot. Now back to this SCP. SCP-7003. He himself is pretty much your average male, just like the last one, except the last one stands up to be around 5'3", very short guy, but this guy stands up to be around 6'1", very muscular, and he's also very violent. Both hands are coated in some type of metal, and he's able to change them at will. He usually is seen trying to dig a way out of his cell, and for like he's in an average humanoid containment cell, reinforced with tungsten, just to make sure it's harder for him to break out. We have done tests on the pieces of metal while he's asleep. That's literally the only way we found we can chop off some metal. It's actually shown that he doesn't show any pain. He doesn't show pain, but he actually does experience the pain. It just ends right there at the end of each arm. Well, each metal piecing. But it still sends up to his brain. We have measured his pain receptors there. And yeah. Normally he's either it's pretty much, and he usually has one giant sword or both giant swords on either arm, and claw-like hands on either arm. But sometimes he's seen with one claw arm and a giant sword. During those times, we have to use a very hot weapon. We basically just crank up SCP-7000 to its maximum attack, and we just fire it at him. It's a concentrated beam plasma that can melt down any metal. We've seen it. I've seen it before, and I will definitely tell y'all more about him that SCP next time. But that was actually during a containment breach. Somehow some Chaos Insurgency members managed to break in and cause containment breach by unlocking all the doors. He broke out, and one guard managed to grab SCP-7000, fire it at him, melting his hands down. That's how we learned that he doesn't have a full-on fire immunity, but it's very high. The metal is unknown still, and he is still, and we have been looking to upgrade his cell to where he won't be, he's still relatively easy to contain, but he's just a pain. Now, that's pretty much it. That's all I got for now, and that's all the files I am able to get now. Let's see ya. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video because that's all the time I got for today. Until next time, subscribe to the Drone Spikes Army or the Monster Alliance. Goodbye and peace out, everyone.